We're out this morning taking some panels off of the garden. This is the row green beans that I cleared off, and Joe just takes a mattock, or you can use a shovel and go just rub on the
high point.
Yeah, the high point where the vines are stuck, and it just breaks them off and you can pull them off easily. That way when we put them up, they're clean for next year.
Okay.
Okay, I'll pull them off.
See, it's coming off good.
Let's get that louder. Alright, a clean panel.
Can't beat that.
You go there and put it up. When I was cleaning out the rows, I picked 2 okra and put down in this bag. And the morning sun is hitting the hayfield, and I love seeing this purple wave of grain. America the Beautiful. So if you've been following the YouTube channel, you knew that when I started the garden this year, I experimented with 2 things, and I've been getting questions about how they worked. And the first one is the electroculture. I put in the electroculture rods on this end of the garden, and some of the plants I put in the smaller coils that I made myself. And I really thought at first it was working. The squash and zucchini were the first things to come in, and they were just humongous, and they were taller than they'd ever been, and they would not quit producing. I finally had to just pull up the plants and get rid of them because I couldn't handle any more squash or zucchini. But talking to other people, theirs were the same way this year, so I don't know if it was the electroculture or what, but theirs were doing the same thing. I couldn't really tell a big difference in the green beans. The tomatoes, they blighted. We had such weird weather this summer, and the leaves blighted, and the tomatoes didn't do as well this year. But anyway, from what I read, the first year you start with electroculture, you probably won't notice a big difference because the soil is just now starting to get replenished with all the nitrogen that it's been depleted of for years. So I will try it again next year and see if I see any difference. Next thing I experimented with was the grow bags. And I did 1 grow bag of sweet potatoes, carrots, and beets. And they did well. I haven't pulled the sweet potatoes up yet. The vines are still green and they haven't died back, so I haven't haven't really pulled the sweet potatoes up because of that. I'll show it to you. See, the vines are still green. The bugs are eating on them, but I haven't pulled them out yet to see. The next bag over there was carrots. Now, the first couple of carrots I pulled up, they were really pretty. I re-sowed some, and they just didn't do much at all. The next bag over there was beets, and the same thing. The first couple of beets were really pretty. I had to re-sow some that didn't come back or didn't come up, and they were just small when I pulled them up. So these were our 10-gallon grow bags, and they're good to grow things in. I think if you have just a small place, you don't have a garden access, you have a patio or a balcony or something, and you want to grow some vegetables just to eat, this would be a good option. If you wanted to grow more than what this 10-gallon bag would hold, that you can buy bigger size bags, but you can also grow them in buckets and containers. You don't necessarily have to have the grow bag. So 1 out of 10 on the grow bag, I would probably give a 5. So that's the story on that. Now, I've done something else today that I want to check on. Boy, that sun is bright on me. The horses have been having problems with flies. I mean, I'm going to get in the shade here. That's a little better. The horses have had flies all over their face, and it's time to mow the fields for hay, so the grass is up high, and they have to stick their head down through that tall grass to pick. And yesterday or day before, they held their face up, and it was just totally covered in flies, and I felt so sorry for them. So I got the 2 fly masks that I had and washed them out and put them on them this morning before I turned them out. Well, Skipper didn't like it at all. She did not like that mask, and Nico didn't know what to think about it. He kept looking at Skipper, and Skipper kept looking at him. I guess they were seeing what each other looked like with that mask on. But it's one that covers the ears and everything, because Skipper got stung on the ear a few weeks ago. So anyway, I thought that would give protection for the bees too. So anyway, I think they're coming up to the barn, and I'm going to go over and check on them and see how they're doing with the fly mask. Skipper's down there behind the barn a little bit, picking. Hey, baby girl. We've had rain, so it's a little bit muddy right here. Hey, honey. How's that mask working out? Nico still has his on. I brushed them this morning and sprayed them all down with fly spray and put the mask on them. I think they've gotten used to the mask throughout the day. Skipper's the boss. All right, they're doing okay. I've seen several woolly worms while I've been pulling the weeds, so my nephew Grant and Blake, brothers, their family goes to North Carolina to the Woolly Worm Festival every year. And Grant came out and got him a woolly worm last year to train it. They have a woolly worm race. So if you have never heard of that, just Google it and see what it's all about. And here's another worm crawling here. Can you see it right there? That looks like a caterpillar. I'm not sure, but I think that's what it is. Well, I'm going to stop right here. I've got half of the row cleared off. That's 2 full wheelbarrow loads, so I'll go dump that one out and call it quits. I'll get the horses in for the night, take my shower, and Joe should be home. Well, fall is in the air for sure, and it's getting cooler in the evenings, and the leaves are starting to change colors, and some are dropping off the trees. So you just have that crispness in the air, and you know fall is right upon us. So I'm thinking about pumpkin bread, and I'm going to prepare some food to take to a friend tomorrow who has cancer and started her chemo this week. So she's gluten-free, so I wanted to make her gluten-free pumpkin bread. And I love this cookbook, How Can It Be Gluten-Free by America's Test Kitchen. And I'm using a recipe in this cookbook. And I've made it before, and it is delicious. I'm not celiac, but I try to eat gluten-free as much as possible. And I know that my friend will like this bread too. Okay, to start with, we're going to use 1 1/4 cup of the gluten-free flour it's the American Test Kitchen blend. And they have the recipe for that in this book, How Can It Be Gluten-Free? And it's basically a mixture of, let me see here, white rice flour, brown rice flour, potato starch, tapioca starch, and non-fat milk powder. And I add a little bit of xanthan gum in there with that. So anyway, so I keep that gluten-free flour blend mixed up in the refrigerator. And I'm going to double this recipe because I'm going to keep a loaf for Joe and myself to eat on. So it calls for 1 1/4 cup of the America's Test Kitchen gluten-free flour blend. So I doubled that, and that's what I have in the bowl. It calls for 3/4 teaspoon of baking powder. So I'm going to double that. I've got a 1/4 teaspoon here. There's 1, 2, 3. It's 3/4. I need to get another one now. 1, 2, 3. That's the Clabber Girl baking powder. And then it calls for 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. So I have the Arm & Hammer baking soda. Again, I'm doubling the recipe, so that's going to be, there's 1/4, and here is 2/4. Now it says to whisk this together to blend it up in the bowl. Okay, that's blended pretty good. So now what we're going to do is combine the pumpkin puree 15-ounce can of pumpkin puree. Well, actually, it says to use 7.5 ounces. So that would make 15 ounces for a double recipe. Use the whole can. And you're going to mix that with the cinnamon, salt, nutmeg, and cloves in a medium saucepan over medium heat. Cook, stirring constantly until mixture is reduced to 3/4 of a cup, which will take 2 to 4 minutes. So let's get those ingredients together. So it calls for 1 loaf of 7.5 ounces of canned pumpkin puree, or 3/4 of a cup, and 3/4 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1/8 teaspoon of ground nutmeg, excuse me, and a pinch of ground cloves. So let's get that started. Okay, I've got the pumpkin and the spices in this pot. I used that whole can, 15-ounce can of pumpkin, and doubled up on the nutmeg and cinnamon and cloves. And it says to stir it constantly, and I guess that's because it will stick on the bottom if you don't, and you certainly don't want it to stick. So it's just now starting to get hot, and it says it'll take 2 to 4 minutes for this to cook down a little bit. Okay, this has been cooking for about 4 minutes, and I think it's just about ready, and it smells so good with those cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves in here. So good. Okay, I'm going to take it off the heat now. Where's my heat? There it is. And I'm going to add a cup of sugar. Where's my sugar? Okay, for one recipe it's a 1/2 cup, and this is a 1/4 cup. So I'm doubling it, so I'm going to put in a cup of sugar. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it says off heat, stirring granulated sugar, the brown sugar, which will be another cup of brown sugar, the vegetable oils, so that will be a 1/2 cup, and cream cheese, and that will be a 1/2 block of cream cheese. So let me get those and get them started. Let me get that sugar going here. Get it melted and dissolved. I'm going to put in a 1/2 block of cream cheese. And I'm going to try to cut that up so it will melt easier. And I will get a cup of light brown sugar. This is a 1/2 cup measuring cup. So there's 1/2. In 1 cup. Let's see, what else do I need? Granulated brown sugar, cream cheese, and oil. So the oil calls for 1/4 cup. That'll be a 1/2 cup of oil. Just use the same measuring stick. It's a 1/2 cup of oil. And stir all this in. Okay, it says in a separate bowl to whisk 2 eggs and 2 tablespoons of buttermilk. So I'm going to make that 4 tablespoons of buttermilk. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'll need 4 eggs. So I needed to get 2 more eggs out. So I got 4 tablespoons of buttermilk and 1, 2, 3, 4. Wipe my hands off. Get my whisk and whisk away. Okay, this has been setting for 5 minutes, the pumpkin mixture here. And it said to whisk until there's no visible signs of the cream cheese. But I have whisked and whisked, and there's still a few little tiny pieces in there, but I think they'll go ahead and dissolve when they bake. So I've got the eggs and buttermilk whisked together, and I'm going to add this to the pumpkin mixture and whisk it to combine. So in it goes. My pot is getting full. So it says, add the egg mixture to the pumpkin mixture and whisk to combine. And then you stir the flour mixture into the pumpkin mixture until thoroughly combined and no lumps remain, which will take about a minute. But since my pot is already full, then I'm going to add this pumpkin mixture to the flour in a bigger bowl. And it's coming together. Okay. I think that's combined really good. So, let me get this out of the way. So, I'm going to add this to the flour mixture and stir it until it's really combined for about a minute. And remember, I doubled the recipe. I will put the recipe to this in the description box below if you're interested. I think I got it all out. I just whisk this up good. I have the oven preheated at 350 degrees, and I've got 2 loaf pans, just standard size loaf pans, sprayed with cooking spray. I had to go check on Joe while I was letting this pumpkin mixture rest for 5 minutes, and he's changing the oil in the farm truck. And he's at the point where he needed me to hold the funnel, his handmade funnel, while he pours the oil in the vehicle. Well, the oil came out really black looking, and he immediately stopped. He said, something's wrong, it's not supposed to look like that. And it was a brand new 5-quart jug that he had just bought. So while he was analyzing that, I said, I have to come back up and finish up this pumpkin. bread, and then I'll be back to help you. Okay, I think that's together really well. And I'm going to pour it in the pans. Well, at this point, if you want to add nuts, you can use walnuts or pecans. And it calls for a half a cup per loaf. And say to toast it and chop it up fine. Well, I'm not sure that my friend can eat nuts, so I'm going to leave them out. So let me get them in the loaves. Okay, I have the bread in my 2 loaf pans, and they're ready to go into the 350-degree preheated oven on the middle rack, and it says to bake it 45 to 50 minutes until the toothpick inserted comes out clean. So in the oven they go. Well, helping Joe with the truck was fun. Let me get you on down here a little bit. But I'm back in the kitchen and the bread is still baking. It has about 24 more minutes before it comes out. And it says to test it about 5 minutes earlier. So we don't want to over bake it for sure. And if you've ever baked gluten-free things, you know it bakes a little different than using regular flours. And I've tried a lot of the gluten-free flours that's on the market, and everything I made was no good. It was grainy texture, heavy, the biscuits and so forth. But until I got this cookbook, which is How Can It Be Gluten-Free Cookbook by America's Test Kitchen. And it's got so many good recipes in here. I've not made everything, but the pumpkin bread is good. I knew you've tried that before. But you use their blend that they developed for gluten-free, and it makes really good breads. And gluten-free pie crust are good, and they have cookies. Pastas, spaghetti and meatballs, all sorts of pastas, and lasagna and eggplant, flax bread, all types of dinner rolls, flax bread, English muffins. It's just packed full with recipes. And so if you're doing gluten-free, there's a picture of the pie crust. I've made the pie crust many times and it's delicious. You can't even tell it's different from any other pie crust. Look at that delicious apple pie. I like apple pie this time of the year. Anyway, I highly recommend this book if you're gluten-free. So I can't really put the recipe in the description below because it's their proprietary blend. So you will need to purchase the cookbook. And I bought mine off of Amazon. So I highly recommend it and hope you get it and enjoy your good gluten-free baked goods. Y'all, the pumpkin bread just came out of the oven and I tested it 5 minutes before the 45 minutes was up. So that's 40 minutes it was in the oven. And I used this little sharp knife and it came out clean on both. So 40 minutes at 350 and it looks beautiful and it smells delicious. The recipe says to let it cool in the pans on a rack for 20 minutes and then remove the bread from the pans and let it rest and cool on the rack for another hour and a half before serving. I don't know if we can wait that long. Okay, it's been 20 minutes cooling on this rack, so I'm going to dump them out of the pan. They came out so easy. Look how browned they are. That one came out easy. I'm going to turn it back over and let it cool for an hour and a half. Next morning, this is my breakfast. 1 piece of bacon, 1 boiled egg, and a slice of the gluten-free pumpkin bread. Look how pretty the texture is on that bread. I put it in the toaster oven to heat it up and it is delicious. And this is Joe's breakfast. Same as mine, only he gets cheese grits.